I was getting ready for work when my little sister sent me a voice memo. Then she texted, "Don't listen." But I already heard her whisper, she was upstairs. And the worst part was, I knew exactly who she was. Me. I stood in the bathroom with my hair half done, and my phone in my hand like it had burned me. For a few seconds, my brain tried to save me. Maybe she sent me a clip from some show and panicked because it sounded bad. But it was Heather's voice. And she had sent it to me by accident. The voice memo was short. "I know we said we wouldn't talk about last night," she said. But I can't stop replaying it. The part that makes me feel the worst is that she was right upstairs. And I know that's messed up. I know. But I miss you already. Then the text came. "Don't listen to that. I sent it to the wrong person. Please delete it." I'm serious. I didn't delete it. I sat on the edge of the bathtub and replayed it. Not because I wanted to hurt myself, but because I needed the words to change. But the words stayed the same. She was right upstairs. I was the one upstairs. Downstairs, Ethan was moving around like it was a normal morning. The night before, Heather had come over after dinner. That wasn't strange. She came over a lot after her breakup. She said her apartment felt too quiet. She said she hated eating alone. She said she missed being around family. And because I believed family meant safety, I let her in every time. I cooked for her. I made space for her. I told Ethan to be patient when she got needy or dramatic. I defended her when he joked that she was basically our third roommate. I thought I was being a good sister. I had no idea I was making my own house comfortable for a betrayal. Heather was 6 years younger than me. I helped raise her in all the quiet ways that don't show up in family photos. Our mom, Carolyn, worked long hours when we were kids, and our dad had a gift for disappearing whenever life got hard. So I became the second adult before I even understood what that meant. I packed Heather's lunches. I brushed knots out of her hair. I picked her up when mom couldn't. I helped with homework. I barely understood myself. When she cried at night, she crawled into my bed, and I stayed awake until her breathing slowed down. She wasn't just my sister. She was the kid I protected. That is why it took me so long to see what was happening. People love to say, there must have been signs. Of course there were signs. There are always signs when you look backward with your heart already broken. She texted Ethan too much. She laughed too hard at his jokes. She asked him for help with things she could have handled herself. He would fix a cabinet door at her apartment, then her Wi-Fi, then her car insurance app, then some shelf she bought and couldn't figure out. At first, I thought it was harmless. Ethan liked being useful. Heather liked being rescued. That had always been her thing. And, honestly, part of me was relieved that my husband and sister got along. I had friends whose spouses hated their families, or whose siblings made every holiday miserable. I thought I was lucky. I thought my husband loved my family. I didn't realize he loved one part of my family in a way that would destroy all of us. That morning, I walked downstairs with my phone in my hand. Ethan was standing by the counter in a gray t-shirt, making coffee like nothing in the world had changed. His hair was still damp from the shower. He turned and smiled at me. Then he saw my face. His smile disappeared. That was the first confession. Not words. His face. He knew before I said anything. I held up my phone and asked, "What happened last night?" He stared at me. I said, "Don't make me ask twice." He put his mug down slowly. "Samantha, what are you talking about?" I pressed play. Heather's voice filled the kitchen. "I know we said we wouldn't talk about last night." Ethan closed his eyes. I watched his shoulders drop. I watched his mouth tighten like he was already choosing which lie to try first. When the voice memo ended, the kitchen went silent. I said, "Tell me I misunderstood." He didn't. He rubbed both hands over his face and said, "It's not what it sounds like." I almost laughed, because that was the stupidest thing he could have said. It was exactly what it sounded like. I asked, "Did you sleep with my sister while I was upstairs?" He said nothing. I asked again, louder. "Did you sleep with my sister in our house while I was upstairs?" He whispered, "It wasn't supposed to happen." Something inside me went still. Not calm. Not peaceful. Still. Like my body knew if all the pain arrived at once, I wouldn't survive it. I asked, "How many times?" He said, "Samantha, please." "How many times?" He looked down. "Twice." I laughed then. It came out ugly and small. "Twice." "Of course. Because once would make you guilty, but twice makes it a mistake you repeated." He flinched. "Good." Then the excuses came. He said they had both been drinking. He said they got too close. He said I had been distant. He said Heather was lonely. He said he felt needed. He said it was a mistake. He said he loved me. He said he was sorry. Every sentence made him smaller to me. Because he wasn't just confessing. He was editing. He was choosing words that made him sound weak instead of cruel. Confused instead of selfish. Tempted instead of willing. I asked, "Did she kiss you first?" He looked up too quickly. And I knew he had planned to say yes. I said, Don't you dare put this all on her now that you got caught." He went quiet. My phone buzzed again. Heather was calling. I looked at Ethan and said, "Did she know I was upstairs?" He covered his face. That answered me. I answered Heather's call and put it on speaker. She was crying before I even spoke. "Samantha, please, I can explain." I said, "Then explain." She sobbed harder. It wasn't supposed to happen. I looked at Ethan because they had both chosen the same line. Like they had practiced it without knowing. I said, "You both keep saying that. Did both of you accidentally fall into each other while I was asleep?" She said, "I know you hate me. I don't know what I feel yet. I never wanted to hurt you." That sentence hit something sharp in me. I said, "Then why did you?" She didn't answer. I said, "Did you sleep with my husband in my house while I was upstairs?" She cried, "I'm sorry." I said, "That's not an answer." She whispered, "Yes." The room tilted. Even though I already knew, hearing her say it made it real in a new way. I was not guessing anymore. I was not paranoid. I was not dramatic. My husband and my little sister had betrayed me under my own roof, then let me wake up the next morning and walk around like a fool. Heather kept crying. "Please don't tell Mom yet. Please. She'll never forgive me." I said, "You should have thought about Mom before you touched my husband." Then I hung up. Ethan reached for me. I stepped back so fast my hip hit the counter. "Don't touch me." He dropped his hand. "I'm sorry." I said, "Stop saying that like it cleans anything." He started crying then. Real tears. Shaking voice. Red face. The whole performance of a man who had finally met the consequences of his own choices. I didn't cry. Not then. I walked upstairs, pulled a duffel bag from the closet, and packed like someone else was controlling my body. Jeans. Shirts. Charger. Toothbrush. Important papers from the drawer. My passport. The little box where I kept my grandmother's ring. Ethan followed me from room to room, begging, "Please don't leave like this." I kept packing. "Can we talk for 5 minutes?" I zipped the bag. "I'll do anything." I looked at him then. "You already did." That shut him up. I drove to Kelly's apartment without remembering the route. She opened the door and one look at me made her face change. "What happened?" I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. So I handed her my phone and played the voice memo. She listened once. Then she said, very quietly, "Come in." That was when I finally cried. Not pretty crying. Not one tear rolling down my cheek. I mean the kind where your chest caves in and you make sounds you don't recognize. Kelly sat on the floor with me while I shook, and for the first time that morning, nobody asked me to calm down. By noon, my whole family knew something was wrong. Heather ran to Mom before I could even think straight. Of course she did. That was Heather's pattern. She broke something, then made sure she was the first person bleeding in front of an audience. Mom called me 11 times. I ignored the first 10. On the 11th, Kelly said, "You don't have to answer." But I did. Mom's voice was already tired and shaky. "Samantha, honey, what happened?" I said, "Ask Heather." She told me there was a mistake. A mistake. She's hysterical. I laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. She slept with Ethan in my house while I was upstairs. Mom went silent. Then she said, "Oh my God." For 1 second, I thought she understood. I thought she would say what any mother should say. I thought she would say, "I'm coming to you." Instead, she said, "Where is Heather now?" I closed my eyes. "Of course," I said. Mom said, "Samantha, don't do that." "I'm trying to understand." "No, you're trying to manage this." "She's fragile right now. She slept with my husband." "I know, but Ethan is the married one." That sentence carved something out of me. I said, "Yes. Ethan destroyed my marriage. Heather destroyed my family." Mom started crying. "She's still your sister." I said, "Then she should have remembered I was hers." She had no answer for that. For the next few days, everyone tried to turn my pain into a family meeting. Mom kept asking if I would come over so we could talk it through. Heather sent paragraph after paragraph. Ethan left voicemails. A few relatives who barely called me suddenly had opinions about forgiveness, grief, and not making permanent decisions while angry. It was funny how quickly everyone became a counselor once they wanted me to absorb the damage. Heather's first messages were all panic. "I'm so sorry. I hate myself. I know I ruined everything. Please don't block me. I can't lose you." Then they changed. That was the part that made me sick. Once she realized I wasn't answering, she started trying to explain. She said she had been lonely after her breakup. She said Ethan made her feel safe. She said she never had a man listen to her like that. She said she knew it was wrong, but it felt like the only place she could breathe. Safe. That word made me want to throw my phone across the room. My husband was her safe place while I was upstairs sleeping, believing they were family. I checked the phone records because I needed to know how long I had been living inside their lie. I found late-night calls, repeated texts, random messages at lunch, pictures she sent him asking if an outfit looked good, him telling her she looked beautiful, her calling him when she was crying instead of calling me. The physical betrayal had happened twice, according to Ethan. The emotional betrayal had been happening for months. That was worse in some ways. A drunken mistake doesn't have a call history. A one-time lapse doesn't have inside jokes. A moment of weakness doesn't need weeks of secrecy. I remembered nights when Heather stayed late and Ethan walked her to her car. I remembered him coming back inside looking distracted. I remembered her hugging him too long at a family dinner. I remembered one night when she leaned across the table to steal food from his plate and he smiled at her in a way I had not seen him smile at me in months. At the time, I told myself I was being insecure. Now I understood. My body had known before my mind was ready. Ethan kept asking to see me. I finally agreed to meet him in a public park because I didn't trust myself to be alone with him in our house. Not because I would hurt him. Because I was afraid I would collapse, and I didn't want him to be the person who caught me. He looked terrible when he showed up. Unshaven. Pale. Same jacket he wore all winter. He sat across from me on a bench and said, "I'll tell you everything." I said, "You should have done that before I heard it from her by accident." He nodded. "I know. Then talk." He told me it started with texting. Heather was sad after her breakup. He tried to be nice. She told him things she said she couldn't tell me because she didn't want to worry me. He liked feeling helpful. He liked being admired. Then the messages got more personal. Then flirty. Then secret. I asked, "When did you realize it was wrong?" He said, "Before anything happened." That answer mattered. Because he knew. He knew before he crossed the line, and he crossed it anyway. He said the first time happened at Heather's apartment. He had gone over to help with a shelf. They drank wine. She cried. He hugged her. One thing led to another. I hated that phrase. One thing led to another. Like betrayal is weather. Like nobody chooses it. Like bodies just drift into disaster without permission. I asked, "And the second time?" He looked away. I said, "In our house." He nodded. I asked where. He said, "Samantha." Where? He swallowed. The living room. I felt my stomach turn. The living room where I folded laundry. Where we watched movies. Where I had put a blanket over Heather when she fell asleep on the couch 2 weeks before. I stood up. Ethan grabbed at the air like he wanted to stop me but knew better. He said, "I love you." I looked at him and realized I didn't believe him anymore. Maybe he did love me in whatever small, selfish way he understood love. But it didn't matter. Love that can betray you that easily is not shelter. It's a house with no locks. I said, "You don't get to love me after using my trust as privacy." He started crying again. "I'll block her. I'll tell everyone it was my fault. I'll go to counseling. I'll sign whatever you want. Just don't end our marriage without trying." I said, "You ended it while I was upstairs." Then I left. 3 days later, Heather sent the message that made something in me permanently shut. It started the same way as all the others. She was sorry. She was ashamed. She missed me. She hated herself. She would do anything to fix us. Then she wrote, "I think I confuse needing comfort with being in love." Being in love. With my husband. My little sister said she was sorry, then admitted she thought she loved my husband. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Not because I was shocked. Because suddenly everything made sense. This had not been one moment. This had not been alcohol. This had not been loneliness. Heather had built a fantasy inside my marriage and used my trust as the doorway. I finally replied. One sentence. "You don't get to call it love when the only reason it existed was because I trusted you both." Then I blocked her. 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. People act like filing for divorce after betrayal is one dramatic moment. For me, it was quiet. I sat in an office with papers in front of me and a pen in my hand. My fingers were shaking, but not because I was unsure. Because I knew once I signed, I was choosing a life I never wanted. I signed anyway. Ethan didn't take it well. He begged. He showed up at Kelly's apartment until she threatened to call the police. He sent emails with subject lines like, "Please read this," and "I know I destroyed everything and I'll wait as long as it takes." I didn't answer most of them. One email said he had blocked Heather and would never speak to her again. That didn't comfort me. Because the problem was not whether he would stop talking to her now. The problem was that he had chosen her when I still trusted him. Heather did not end up with him. That almost made it worse in a strange way. If they had run off together, at least the betrayal would have looked like something they believed in. Instead, once the secret was exposed and everyone was disgusted, the fantasy collapsed. Apparently, they barely spoke after I left. So I lost my marriage and my sister over something they didn't even have the courage to keep. Family pressure started after the divorce papers were filed. Mom tried to stay neutral, which is a polite way of saying she wanted access to both daughters without holding one accountable. She kept saying, "I'm not defending what Heather did." Then she would defend Heather. She was lonely. She has always looked up to you. She knows she made a terrible mistake. She's barely eating. She asks about you every day. I finally told Mom I am not Heather's punishment. Stop trying to use my forgiveness as proof that she'll be okay. Mom cried and said, "I'm scared I'm losing both my daughters." I said, you're not losing both of us. One of us is asking you to stop making the other one's guilt my responsibility. That conversation changed things. Not completely, but enough. Mom stopped calling every day. She stopped telling me about Heather's sadness. She stopped asking when I was coming to Sunday dinner. I think she finally understood that every time she asked me to make peace, she was asking me to stand in the ashes and pretend I wasn't burned. Some relatives were worse. An aunt told me, men come and go, but sisters are forever. I said, apparently husbands and sisters both come and go if they're selfish enough. Not my proudest moment, but I meant it. A cousin told me Heather was young and made a mistake. I said, she's old enough to know not to sleep with her sister's husband. That ended the conversation. Kelly was the one person who never made me feel dramatic. She let me be angry. She let me be quiet. She let me say ugly things and then bring me tea like I was still a person worth caring for. One night, I told her I feel stupid. She said, you were trusting. That's not stupid. I said, it feels the same. She sat beside me and said, no. Stupid is ignoring the truth after you know it. You're not doing that. I held on to that. The house had to be sold. That part hurt more than I expected. I thought I hated the house after what happened, and I did, but I also loved parts of it. The kitchen where I made Sunday pancakes. The bedroom window where morning light came in soft. The little dent in the hallway wall from when Ethan and I moved in and dropped a bookshelf because we were laughing too hard. Betrayal ruins memories in a strange way. It doesn't erase the good ones. It poisons them and makes you question whether they were ever real. When we cleaned out the house, Ethan tried to talk to me. He said, do you ever think someday we could at least not hate each other? I looked around the living room. The same living room. I said, I don't hate you. I just don't want access to you anymore. He looked hurt, but he nodded. That was the truth. Hate felt too active, too connected. I didn't want to carry him around like that. I wanted distance. I wanted quiet. I wanted a life where my phone buzzing didn't make my stomach drop. After the sale, I moved into a small apartment near a lake. It wasn't fancy. The floors creaked. The bathroom cabinet didn't close right. The kitchen was too small. But it was mine. Nobody had betrayed me there. That mattered more than granite countertops. The first morning in that apartment, I woke up before my alarm. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I heard nothing. No Ethan in the shower. No coffee grinder. No Heather laughing too loudly downstairs. Just a quiet room, pale light, and my own breathing. I cried again. But it was different that time. It wasn't the kind of crying that breaks you open. It was the kind that lets something leave. The calm victory came slowly. Ethan's friends found out. I didn't blast him online. I didn't need to. People asked why we split, and I told the truth plainly. He had an affair with my sister. There is no soft version of that sentence. Most people didn't ask follow-up questions. From what I heard, his closest friends pulled away. A few were furious because they had welcomed Heather around too. One of them texted me and said, I'm sorry. We had no idea. I believed him. Heather tried to reinvent herself as a broken person who made a mistake and deserved healing. She posted something vague online about being human, making choices you can't take back, and learning to forgive yourself. I didn't respond. Kelly did. She commented, some mistakes require planning, secrecy, and another woman's husband. Heather deleted the post within an hour. I won't pretend that didn't feel good. A month after the divorce was finalized, Heather sent flowers to my office. White roses. My favorite, because of course she knew. The card said, I'll always love you. I hope someday you can hear me. I stared at it for a long time. Then I gave the flowers to the receptionist and threw the card away. That sounds cold when I write it out. Maybe it is. But I couldn't keep accepting emotional souvenirs from the person who helped destroy my life. Her regret was not a gift. It was another thing she wanted me to hold. And I was tired of holding things for Heather. I had done it my whole life. Her fear. Her loneliness. Her chaos. Her need to be rescued. Her tears. I was done. The hardest part is that I still miss who I thought she was. That's what nobody warns you about. When someone betrays you, you don't just lose the person. You lose the version of yourself who felt safe loving them. Some days I remember Heather as a little girl with tangled hair, standing in my bedroom doorway with a stuffed rabbit under one arm, asking if she could sleep beside me because the house felt scary. I remember making room for her. I remember whispering, you're safe. I hate that memory now. Not because it was fake. It was real. That's what hurts. I loved her for real. I protected her for real. And somehow the woman she became still looked at my life, my home, my marriage, and decided her comfort mattered more than my pain. I don't know how to forgive that. Maybe someday I'll feel differently. Maybe time will make it softer. Maybe I'll reach a place where hearing her name doesn't feel like touching a bruise. But forgiveness is not a family chore. It's not something my mother can assign because the holidays are uncomfortable. It's not something Heather earns by crying enough. It's not something Ethan deserves because guilt made him lonely. Right now, my peace depends on distance. So I keep my life small and calm. I go to work. I come home. I make coffee exactly how I like it. I read by the window. I answer Mom when she talks about normal things. I hang up when she starts drifting toward Heather. I don't check anyone's phone. I don't wonder who is lying in the next room. I don't wake up beside someone who used my trust as cover. That is my revenge. Not screaming. Not exposing screenshots. Not ruining them. Just refusing to carry the consequences they created. Ethan signed the final papers without fighting me. Heather and I have not spoken since I blocked her. Mom still hopes I'll change my mind someday, but she has stopped saying it out loud. Last week, I ran into Heather at a grocery store. I was in the cereal aisle of all places. I turned the corner and there she was, holding a basket like she had forgotten what she came to buy. She looked thinner. Tired. Her eyes filled the second she saw me. She whispered, "Samantha." For a second, I saw both versions of her. The little girl who used to crawl into my bed. And the woman who slept with my husband while I was upstairs. My chest hurt, but I didn't move closer. She said, "I miss you." I nodded once and said, "I know." Then I walked away. I cried in my car afterward. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. But I still drove home. I still made dinner. I still slept through the night. That felt like victory. Not the kind people clap for. The quiet kind. The kind where you realize you can survive seeing the person who broke you and still choose yourself. So now I'm asking because my family still thinks I'm too cold. They say Heather made a horrible mistake. Ethan was the one who owed me vows, and cutting her off forever means I'm letting him destroy our family twice. But I don't see it that way. Ethan broke my marriage. Heather broke my trust in a place that existed long before him. And maybe that is why her betrayal hurts deeper. Because husbands can become strangers. But sisters are supposed to remember where they came from. So am I wrong for refusing to forgive my little sister after she had an affair with my husband, even if my family says I'm the one keeping us broken?